Okay, let's start. So thank you for coming. Okay, a few months ago when Anna asked me about sending a proposal for this talk, at that time I was doing a residency in Maui, Hawaii, with the members of my collective, Samah and Diala. And at that time, we were in this residency, it's a farm, and we decided to do this residency to actually discuss our relationship, the relationship of the collective, where we are, what's our future, what are we doing right now, and all of that. So that was what I suggested for my topic right now, but now, 3 months have passed, and I'm here right now, so I'm going to talk about other things too. When I wanted to come to Poland, I had to go and get a visa. So at the Polish embassy, when I went to apply, the consul came out of the embassy and said, "We're very excited that you're going to Poland. This is the first time that somebody from Jordan in the arts is going to Jordan. So that's why we're going to treat you like a VIP." So I told him, "What does a VIP mean?" And he said, "We will not take money from you, and we will give you a 1-year Schengen visa to Europe, although I haven't asked for." So I asked him, "So who goes to Poland from Jordan?" And he said, "Members of the military." So I asked him, what do they do there? And he said, they go do training and other stuff. So I said, okay. So I was very curious to understand what's this relationship between Poland and Jordan. And I did very, minimal research on the internet, and I found that there's really major military agreements between Poland and Jordan. The last one was actually signed in May 2013. Yeah, it's very, very recent. And I discovered that there's actually a major forum, business Polish forum, that's been happening for 8 years now between Poland and Jordan. Another thing I found out is this thing called the Eagle Lion. I don't know if some of you are aware of this. This is a major military operation that is organized by the United States and Jordan, and it happened in the desert in south of Jordan. And it's a military operation that invited 12,000 soldiers from 19 countries were participating. Yes, Turkey is part of... So, yeah. Turkey is one of these countries, and Poland too. Just for you to have an idea about the scale of this operation. So basically, it's like a residency for soldiers. And what they do is they train on anti-terrorism operations, national security, and it's all collaboration between these countries exchanging expertise. All. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
This is a military camp, or?
Yes.
Whoa.
This is a military camp.
On which desert is situated?
It's in the south of Jordan. It's not very clear, the specific location. You can't really get exactly where but it was announced in the press and in the news, and it wasn't like a hidden secret that nobody knew about. US and Jordan. No, US and Jordan. Yeah. So I got curious more, and at one point I was scanning lots of documents from my family, and I found my grandfather's passport. My grandfather was born in Jaffa in Palestine in 1900. His parents are from Jerusalem, actually, but at that time, his father went to Jaffa to start some orange groves. He was a judge, and he was retiring at that time. So I was looking through his passports. This passport was issued in 1955, and it says countries for which this passport is valid. It says all countries. So I look at his passport in 1968, and countries for which this passport is valid, it's except all of these countries. Excluding, it says all countries excluding, and then you can read that Poland is on the list of countries, which is something really interesting for me because I didn't know that at that time. I mean, I knew that the US didn't allow people to go to communist countries. I had no idea that also Arab countries had this, but because of its relationship with the US, this was happening. So this connection, you know, thank you. My interaction with the consul at the embassy and looking at my grandfather's documents and this whole relationship between countries made me think a lot about why I'm in Poland, actually. What does it mean that I apply to a residency that announced that Jordan, as a country, is listed in one of these countries? Because I'm trying my best to actually escape this kind of nationalistic identification with the country. I mean, I felt that when the consul was telling me, you're the first person representing Jordan to go to Poland, I had this really strange feeling, is that what does this really mean? What does it mean when it's listed beside my name outside that I come from Jordan? What kind of a responsibility is this that I'm representing a country that, okay, I come from this country, but my identity is much more complicated than that. Even my father, when he wants to explain to people about my work and the art space, and when I get invited, he always tells people, my daughter is invited to this place to represent Jordan. And we always have these arguments. You know, I tell him, why do you say that? I'm not representing anybody. I'm representing myself, the space, the artists that I work with, my colleagues. Why do you? So he said it's always easier for people to relate to that. When you say that you're going to represent a country, it's much easier to relate to that. So this is something that I've been thinking about since I arrived to Poland, that what does it mean as a person coming from Jordan that I'm in Poland? Let's do a cheers, maybe. Yeah. Yes, cheers. Cheers. Thank you for the invitation.
Welcome to Poland.
Welcome to Poland, yeah. You can, by the way, stop me at any point, and if you have like a thought or a question, please go ahead. So last April, we celebrated our 10th anniversary at the space Makan, which is a space that is located in Amman. And we invited people to come and eat and have drinks and all of that. But this celebration also made me think, you're distracting me. This celebration also made me think, what does it mean that we're actually celebrating? What is it that we're celebrating? Are we celebrating that we're still existing, that we still survive, that we still have a space? What are we actually celebrating? And so maybe I'll tell you a bit about what we've done, just very briefly. We've organized lots of residencies. This is one of the residencies that we did for 3 years. We organize it in a village in the north of Jordan, and we invite artists and spend 2 months in this very special village that's being abandoned. And it's 200 years old. You can see a view for the village. We locate the artists in different houses of these villages. We collaborate with all of the villagers. And artists actually have the whole village to work from. So these two group artists took over this abandoned house and lived in this house for 2 weeks during the residency. This Moroccan artist took the per diem that we give the artist for production, which is $200, and he cashed it into dimes and made it into the map of Jordan. And during the opening, he wanted to see how people would react with having money on the floor. This is a small intervention by a Jordanian artist, Mais. She started finding different spots in the village, and she did this small sculptural pieces that people can use and interact with to overlook different spots in the village. This is a work by an Iraqi artist who started walking in the village for the first week and finding all of these abandoned shoes. So she made this whole collection of shoes that most of them didn't have their pair, actually. They were all singles. And you can see the structure of the houses. This is a performative piece where the Lebanese artist Yumna Shalala asked us to basically cut onions, but with goggles, and we had like a 3-hour conversation during cutting the onions. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, we do an open day where we invite the public to come and look at the works all through the village. And people come from the city and from the neighboring towns. But what I want to say about this residency is that it was the first time that somebody really takes out these contemporary practices outside of the city of Amman, because everything actually happens inside the city. So it was a very special experience to take all of these artists and place them outside of the city and see how they would react. At one point, we took over this building. It's a 1950 building that was also abandoned. And we managed to convince the municipality to give us some money to renovate some of this building. We used to rent one of the studios upstairs to host artists, but not anymore. And we did lots of video installations at that point. This is a video installation by artist Amal Qinawi, who was a very important artist who passed away a year ago. This is a video installation in one of the rooms by artist Hassan Khan from Egypt. So we hosted lots of video screenings, talks, exhibition at the space. We did lots of public intervention. This is a work by Uraib Tuqan on the rooftops of the city. From her studio, she would see military airplanes hovering around her studio, so she wanted to play with these planes, so she did all of these arrows to actually communicate with these planes. We did public performances. This is Samah, who's part of the collective, who did a speech based on Jamal Abdel Nasser, who was the Pan-Arabism leader. And she played with his speech, and she then invited people to do the speech with her in the middle of the vegetable market in downtown Amman. This is an installation by Diala, who's also a member of the collective. She worked on this car, which is a very popular car called Diana, and it's driven by, of course, men. But the ironic thing is that these men are really huge men, but all of their cars are extremely decorated with crazy, kitsch stuff. So she worked on that. We did music performances in public parts. This is 100 copies, a independent music label from Egypt. This is a German artist called Johnny Amore who came for a residency for a month, and he has this persona of being a superhero. So he went around the city just being himself as a superhero and how he interacted with the people in the street. He was warned before he came to Jordan. His friends told him, no, you can't do this in Jordan. People, will harass you. You will get, the police will attack you. He had the best time ever because, people were able to get the humor in his gesture. We did public talks with a bunch of students from the art schools. we started looking, a few years ago, we started looking for the kids who dance, who do hip hop street performances in the streets. So we started, inviting them. We did this huge workshop, dance workshop. And we managed to, get them a bit off the street and worked with them on different projects and a festival. We worked with refugee camps. We did some collaborations between refugee camp in Lebanon and a refugee camp in Jordan. What I wanted to say is, it's been 10 years now, and we've developed from a space, a physical space, to actually 3 people being around in different places between Amman and San Francisco. And we keep thinking, why are we so much tied up to the physical space? What does the physical space mean to us right now? Can we actually exist without having this entity, the space in Amman? So we're actually trying to find ourselves in being more independent and having this separation from the physical space. Can we actually produce and think in different contexts? Or are we just stuck to this one space? Can we let go of the space and actually do work in San Francisco or do work in Warsaw? And what does it mean? We're so stuck to this physical space that it's really took over us. The day-to-day running the space, fundraising, the responsibility towards the audience, all of these questions that we're trying to understand. In a city that is really now in a difficult situation, which I'll talk about soon. Being in the public was not a very common thing. Giving a speech in the middle of a vegetable market. We also did one of the performances, we actually did it in downtown in front of a police station. And the police came, and I was there, I was producing the performance, and we told them, we took like a film, permit from a film institution, and we said, we're just doing this is just an act. Because we expected that the intelligence would come and ask us about this. So at that time, being in the street and doing a public performance was not, and doing, having a loud microphone and people gathering was not a very normal scene at all. So looking back at it now, it's actually very interesting. I think if she goes now and does the same performance now, they wouldn't let her. Because it would be some sort of a sign of something, that she's protesting against something. But at that time, 3 years ago, a woman standing in the middle of the street shouting, nobody really cared. And then she asked members of the audience to stand on the podium and to say the same speech. Okay? Yeah, this guy. This guy visited Makan every single month for 5 years, almost 5 years. He sells nuts, like mixed nuts. And he lives in Aleppo. Aleppo is a big major city in Syria, north of Syria. It's 3 hours from Damascus. And he used to come through Aleppo, Damascus, Amman, to sell some of his nuts in the city. And last time, this image was taken in, I think, May 2011, which is 3 months after the uprising that started in Syria. And since then, he disappeared. We don't know anything about him. I only know his first name, so there's no way of really tracking him to know where he is. So I started, we on Facebook, we get every day, we're bombarded with these crazy images from Syria. So the other day, I saw this link that posted these, crazy images of the Free Army, which is the kind of the rebels that are the kind of the opposition that are fighting the government, the military in Syria now. And these are images of them. So I started making up stories about all of these people that just disappeared, like this guy, the guy from Aleppo who disappeared. This is an image of this Free Army taking over, I guess, a small villa or small palace that they took over, and they're just swimming in the pool. They probably did some operation and they killed people. I don't know what they were doing, but I think this is a very strong image. So I started imagining what if this guy is this guy who's jumping in the pool? Or this very interesting image. So this Santa Claus is actually holding this, what do you call it? Kalashnikov. Yeah, and he's probably from the Free Army guys, and he's probably, of course, a Muslim guy, I would assume. And he's directing this person who's probably from this village to where to go. So I was thinking, what if our Aleppo guy is this guy behind the mask? And then there's this image of these guys dancing, celebrating. They're probably celebrating also some operation they did, I don't know. So I was thinking, what if our Aleppo guy is this guy who's just sitting on the couch? So the story of this guy just makes me think about this idea of disappearance that we're dealing with every day. So, I mentioned this in my conversation the other day about the situation in Amman, the city in Jordan, and how it's linked to its neighboring cities. So we used to go to Beirut, to Cairo, to Damascus for the arts, for the culture, to buy books, to watch good films, to meet our friends, to eat good food, and it was our, breathing. All of these cities were our breathing spots. You would get into the car, and in 2 hours and a half, 3 hours, you would be in Damascus. And the same with Beirut and Cairo. So this is all disappearing. So what does our existence mean now when we have to exist in these conditions? And it also makes me, question things related to our art practice and us as people who are responsible in the art context in the city. Is what do you do when artists just disappear? I mean, most of the artists from my generation who are, let's say, early 30s, late 30s, are not in Amman anymore. They don't work in Amman. They go to study outside, or they eventually end up in Europe, in the US, or in cities like Cairo or Beirut. And they come sometimes to do some work in the city. So this kind of, the idea of disappearance that is happening constantly, what does it mean? What does it mean for the three of us? I mean, we've worked with each other for a reason. We're very good friends. We had some interest in the arts, and we needed each other in the city. But what does it mean when we don't exist in this city anymore? We can't exist in this city anymore. This city is not enough for us. We need other, good conditions to survive and to think and to produce and all of that. What does it mean? How do we keep this relationship going? So all of these are questions that we keep asking ourselves. I think I'm done. Yeah.
So you said that you wanted to get kind of disconnected from the place, the residency space that you were running, and I would be interested, how does your practice look like right now?
That's a very good question. What happened is 2 years ago, I decided to go to study. to take a break from the space and from my own context, and I just needed to be away. So I did that, and it's only been 3 years now. So first 2 years I was in school, and you can imagine being in school, you're just completely in school. And then I decided that after school for 1 year, I'm just going to try and float around and see how does this work. So I'm still in this phase where I've managed to, the most important thing is that I've managed to see myself kind of separating from this physical space, from Makan. And I started realizing what my interests are separate from the space itself. So I can't really give you a very straightforward answer. I'm still in the process of figuring that out, but it really helped me a lot taking this distance and being able to separate myself from this very specific context, and not only the physical space. I don't know if I answered your question, but...
Yes, I mean, we could also, yeah, maybe that's enough. I also wanted to ask you about the project that you exhibited at Apex Art, if this is possible to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, so I did an exhibition at a space called Apex Art in New York. It was a call for application, and it was actually an exercise through class. So our professor told us, apply for this exhibition proposal just as a practice. So I applied, and I got it. Basically, it's something that I've been thinking about for years. I was born in Kuwait, and we left during the war, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And I think lots of people from my generation, we were 16, 15 at that time, we never really dealt with this. What did it mean that we left our house, our school, our friends when we were 15? Because everyone went to a different country, we went to schools and universities, and just life went on, basically. We never really discussed it with our parents. We never really processed what happened. We left our houses and never went back. So this topic kept haunting me, especially when all of the situation started happening in the Middle East, and the situation started getting really bad in Syria, and people started, dislocating and moving, and then we started having refugees again, and I started thinking about all of these traumas that are happening and compiling through generations that nobody talks about. I mean, my parents, they have the trauma of leaving Kuwait, but before that they left Palestine, and before that their parents left Palestine, and they never really processed that. So it's in our genes, this constant dislocation, it's in our genes. So that's why I decided to start phase 1 of my research of actually just documenting interviews with people, mostly from my generation, about their experience when they left Kuwait. Through their memories, through the objects, through their parents, whatever it is. And I collected all of this material as a start, and I presented it to these 6 artists that I worked with, and I asked them to work with this material for the exhibition. So that was phase 1, let's say, from the project, and now I was asked by a university in Kuwait, actually. They heard about the project, and they said, we want you to do something actually in Kuwait. So I need to, continue what I want to do is, I think this is going to be an ongoing project, and I'm going to keep documenting interviews and collecting material about this idea, because some people I sat with, it's been 23 years, and they still feel depressed. They still feel they don't belong to being in Jordan, because they feel that they were forced in leaving. So many things that when you sit with people and talk about it, you feel that the trauma is still there. So yeah, the Apex exhibition, I would say, is just like a small fragment of what I'm thinking.
In some of our previous conversations, you mentioned this idea that you need alternative geography, a kind of alternative map of places that you could possibly belong to, instead of being, this is how I understand it, kind of ascribed to a place. And you also started with this today. And I'm just thinking whether it's, I'm curious about this alternative geography. Are you starting every time with, let's say, setting up an idea of a home, like kind of making yourself, or you just escape? If you could, like.
The good thing about me is I'm very adaptable. So wherever I go, I can, because being in so many places and not belonging to this place, I actually don't want to have one home. I'm trying to resist this idea. This idea is that you can, actually create different thoughts about what you want right now, and you just live with it, and you don't have to have this one, I reject the idea of one anyway. So whether it's home, whether it's whatever it is, I'm trying to reject that. So I don't think there will ever be this sense of home that people like. I've been thinking about this a lot since I came to Poland, and I was like, really, I don't know what it means when you were talk about your country. We were walking in the streets yesterday, and the architects and how they describe the streets and how they describe their history. I don't know this feeling. I really cannot relate to it. I don't understand when people talk about they have this strong feeling about their country. Since I got here, I've been saying like, Polish, this is Polish. I don't know what it means. I can't relate to it. It's an alien idea for me. So it always makes me think when I'm in situations like this about the idea of home and what does it really mean. But I think you start creating different connections with places and that create this idea of home or whatever it is.
Hub or something. It's interesting what you said about people referring to Polish. I think I never hear it actually,
no?
but I actually think that there is something like a strong Warsaw identity that starts to develop right now, and it's more like a Warsaw identity being stronger than a national identity, a kind of a citizenship in terms of the polis of the city. So maybe it's I would rather think about that than our generation referring to the Polishness. But it's interesting still.
I'm interested in. Actually, I have 3 questions.
Yes, sure.
First is how to describe the Jordan people Jordan people's relation for their nationality, their identity. Because you said that they are thinking about the citizen of Amman. They are thinking about, as I understand well, the citizens of Amman. Yes. They are not very connected to the space where they are living. So it could be, okay, I'm living here, but it could be anywhere else.
The thing is about Amman is that it's an interesting mix because the country in general lives off refugees. So we have lots of refugees. So we have around, let's say, 1 million Iraqi refugees. Mm-hmm. People like us who came from Kuwait, who are originally Palestinians, so it's very complicated. There were like 500,000 Palestinians who came to Jordan in the early 90s. Now you have 1 million Syrians. So the city is really a very mixed city. So the identity, there's no clear identity because nobody really, like 70% of the population of the country are not originally from the country itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but still, I believe that every city, every big group of people have to have some kind of identity, and I'm wondering if not the place is building the identity of Amman citizen, then what is it?
They're very confused. It's a city that is trying to build some sort of an identity, but it's really, really hard for them to build an identity. How can you build an identity of a place that is, it keeps changing constantly. Mm-hmm. The amount of change that happens with the population is very fast. So at the moment, it wasn't like 2 years ago, and 2 years ago was not like 7 years ago. So I think the government as a government is, all it thinks about is its security. All the effort is about the national security, so that we have one of the most strongest intelligent forces in the world. This all has to be edited, by the way, on the, yeah. Yeah. So I lost my thought.
No, I was also wondering because still, if you said that there are Iraqi minority,
Yes.
actually maybe not minority now, but you have.
We're talking, just so you have an idea, we're talking about a country that's 7 million only. So you can imagine how much.
As I remember, 2 million of them live in Amman.
Yeah, around 2 million, and 2 million, almost 3 million now with the influx of people coming in. So you can imagine, the relationship between the total number of the population and how many people are, being integrated in this. What are you going to do with this? We have around, 6,000 refugees now from Syria. The refugee camp where they stay is now considered the 5th biggest city in the country. It's really becoming a city with a complete structure, with the, crime rate is high, prostitution, drugs, a whole business. So what's going to happen with these people? I mean, I don't know if I diverted from your question, I think, but I don't think there's an identity. The identity is this, what I'm telling you about. It's a very complicated, there's no one, it's very hard for them to come up with one, because people don't relate to the city. Most people, they either are immigrants or people want to leave. Lots of the people who are from Jordan, they are either have kids who work in the Gulf cities because of the money and the economy, or they're planning to leave. So it's a constant, transit city. It's, of course, in the middle. The one good thing about it, it's the only, until now, it's considered the only safe, zone. And it's safe for a reason, because it's has borders with Israel. So that's the main reason why they make sure to make it, the safe zone in the region, in very simple ways. So.
Okay. And then I was curious about the art environment in this kind of city. What was your auditory? Audience, yeah. What was your audience in Amman?
The audience.
I have to tell you, I've been in Amman. I was visiting it 3 years ago, and I was spending just one day in Amman. The rest time I spent in the Wadi Rum desert.
Yeah.
But my expression of this city, especially because it was an art workshop. Yeah, that was the
what
case.
Workshop? Which workshop?
That was the workshop organized by my Academy of Art, where I was studying. Yeah, but that was Amman was for me as a person connected to the art environment. That was a place in the map completely abroad, because I couldn't imagine the art society in Amman. That's why I'm curious about the people who are dealing with your projects.
So we have, a diversity of audience. We have the younger people who are, in their early 20s in schools, and it's really, the audience is very diverse depending on the project. So we work with younger artists, and then we work with emerging artists, and sometimes we invite international artists. So we usually have, for example, audiences more for film screenings and exhibitions, and they range from people who are in their 20s to their late 30s. We have older generations for the films. We started with a very small audience when we first started 10 years ago. And then, you know, things started becoming bigger in the city, so the audiences became, you know, people started doing film festivals, so the audiences went to the film festivals, and then we had dance, and then we had theater, so things started changing. But we don't have a very loyal audience, I would say. I wouldn't describe our audiences as loyal audiences.
And how about this project in a public space? Did many people
Attend?
like the normal citizens of the city attend this project?
We lots of the public events, we don't actually announce them. It depends. Some of them, like the public interventions, like the one on the roof, was not announced. It was just there. The public lecture, the performance, Where Are the Arabs? We announced it. But we also make sure that there's public audiences in the. We don't only rely on our art audiences. But what I'm telling you is the interesting thing about the audiences is that lots of them leave. So we always have new faces. Okay, so I wasn't really fair when I said they're just not loyal, but it keeps changing because, you know, people go and come, and so we have different audiences all the time.
Okay, so and then my third question, also connected to what you've talked as far, what's your relation to Amman? Because you said that as I understand well, you were tired of this city where everybody's living. So what keeps you so long?
I have a love.
You have a mission. You have a feeling.
No, I don't want to have this idea of that I have a mission. I'm over that. I've never played this role where I.
So it was interesting for you, simply.
I have a love-hate relationship with this city. I mean, my family is there. My very good friends are there. And the city really, I'm having this confused feeling about the city because the city really was my connection to the region, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. It was my main point to get to the other cities. So I never felt that I'm only related to Amman. I was related to a whole region. So at a certain time, it was satisfying for me because my world was a bit bigger. And now it's getting smaller. So that's why my relationship, you feel suffocated now in the city. You can feel it. You can feel that people are feeling that the borders are closing. So it's small. And I was younger, 10 years ago when I started the space. Of course, I had more energy. I was more excited. You know, it was different. Mm-hmm. And it was a good time for us when we started the space till 7-8 years ago. But now it's not. At this time I'm in my life, it's not enough for me. It's too small. So I can't just have it as one option. In order for me to survive in Amman, I need to have another breathing point. But when I go there, it's where my mother and father and friends and food and music and arak and sun. Yeah.
I guess we feel all dislocated these days. All the people living around East Mediterranean zone, because obviously there is a big operation of border changing, and all the structures are going to change. And I'm sure, as a transition point and as a kind of transition point of security, probably Amman is one of the first places to feel that kind of movement coming. Mm-hmm. But we also, we spoke about this already. We also feel it a lot in Turkey. What's going on with the southern border zone with Syria, especially. But I'm curious about your experience in San Francisco, because you said you needed a space, you needed to get away, and you enrolled in a school. You went to a very particular school. As we know, all these curatorial schools, they have all their particular agenda, and I'm curious that how it got into your own agenda, how Do you think the school really transformed some of your curatorial ideas?
I think it, to speak about it very generally, it really made my world bigger. The way I look at things became much bigger. And I don't mean it in, in my practice, I'm not interested in big events or biennales or big shows. This is not, I've never was interested, and this did not change after school. And I don't mean more international. I just feel like my thoughts really, looking at things, became much wider. The way I process ideas became much more open. The way I probably, because I was in a at the end, a very safe environment in Jordan. It's a small scene, even Cairo, Beirut, at the end it's a small scene. So people knew who I am, I knew people, the space was established, so it wasn't challenging anymore. But I really, in San Francisco, I had to, as if I had to start from zero. Explaining who I am, I started explaining myself in a completely different way because I was in a big distance. I mean, in Jordan, I didn't have to say who I am, okay? So in San Francisco, I started re-identifying who I am. And with time, it actually made me think about, all of these questions that I asked started developing while I was in San Francisco through school. Not necessarily in class, but within the discussions and the topics that we dealt with, it all made me think about these issues that I'm dealing with right now. So this is it was really a good break. And I went to San Francisco, and a few months later, the revolution started. So I went through a traumatic experience and depression. Yeah, it was a really very tough period for me, because one of the reasons that I left is that I felt that things are not changing, and I was hopeless, and then all of these revolutions started. So I actually started doing my research, my thesis. What I decided to do is document some of my artist friends, two of them in Egypt, one in Syria, and one in Jordan, and I started documenting what they're thinking right now at the moment. And all my thesis was based on Skype meetings with these artists, just documenting, like they would be in Tahrir Square the night before, and then we would talk the second day, and just documenting what they were going through. And because at one point I said, okay, I have to leave, I have to go back. I can't stay in San Francisco, in California, doing my master's while all of this shit is happening. So, but then I thought, okay, what am I going to do there? I don't know what I'm going to do there. So I decided to stay, basically, and my professors were really very helpful with me. They were very open about discussions, so I used to go and talk to them every day about what I'm feeling, and Americans are, really open, and that they're very good with their time, and they're very supportive, and they said, you can always go back, but if you don't know what you're going to go, you don't have a plan, just finish your studies and then you can always go back. So that was a very important period for me to be, I still feel that I missed on something major that happened, a really historical moment that I missed. And I think I will never get over this.
It's always tough to be away when these things are happening. It's very tough.
I really missed a major historical moment in my generation. But this is what happened, and I have to deal with it.
And how your thesis has developed then? How your thesis has developed on the conversations?
I started making an imaginary future based on. So it was a fictional, because I had lots of discussions with my advisors, and one of them was a Lebanese writer. He was great. His name is Diala Khasawnih, and he was actually. What do you mean? Kicked out of Lebanon a few years ago because of his writings. And
he's in the States, right?
He's in the States, yeah. So we used to have these long conversations, and it was important for me because he was also away from what everything was happening. So at the end, I decided that the best thing I would do is just come up with a fictional idea about what's going to happen with my practice, with the space, and I demolished the whole space in my fictional proposal, and they actually made an exception for me because usually the thesis has to be more of an academic piece of writing. Yeah, at the end you have to get your thesis, you basically have to present a very academic, curatorial piece of thinking and writing. But I told them this is what I'm thinking right now, and this is the only thing I can come up with. So they were good. But I have to say that my problem in San Francisco and the school is that I felt alienated from the people around me in class. They had a different conversation. Like the day I would always introduce, politics into the table, and it was a really very basic level of politics that we were discussing. And sometimes it was a good break maybe for me for not discussing politics because, it's part of our blood to discuss it. So I thought maybe I should just, try to live my life without discussing But then they started getting curious, also because of what.
Because it got fancy, also, no?
Yeah, exactly.
But then revolution became a fancy concept, also.
But then I started doing these small interjections in class, like when Hosni Mubarak did his famous speech before, when everybody was expecting him to step down and he didn't. I went to class and I was like shaking, and I told my professor, listen, he's going to do the speech, we have to put it right now. And then he said, okay, let's just put the speech. And everybody was on Al Jazeera, and we watched the speech, and he didn't give his class. We actually discussed what happened. Nice. So there was space for that, which was also it didn't make me feel alienated. So people in the class started, getting more interested. But for me, is that I'm not very much up to doing like history classes or discussing, 101. I'm not always up for that, especially when these events were happening. You wanted somebody to,
involve in the discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's such a complicated history. There are all these layers, and it's. Of course, people always arrive at very easy conclusions, like from what they see and what they hear, and it's also normal. And then at some point, you don't have the patience, to talk about, but this happened, and this is the reason of that, and that's the reason of this, and it's not as simple as that, Yeah. But it's it's very difficult to explain sometimes. I also understand.
Also, it was an important. In my practice, and I used to choose the people I want to work with, the artists, the writers, the designers, my colleagues, people that I liked, that I was interested in. So in school, I had to work with people that actually I had nothing in common with, nothing, zero. And it was a big challenge for me to do that. Trying to navigate different ways of, working with people that you have nothing in common with. So, I discovered new skills about me, or new insecurities, or self-doubt, lots of self-doubt about my practice and all of that. So now when I think about it, it was a very intense experience, but I think it was good for me because I never had any education in the arts before. My background is in political science and management, and I just went to the arts by, out of passion and chance and interest. So I thought it would be a good chance for me to, just have the chance to read a bit, because, when you're working a lot, there's never enough time to read and write, and so it satisfied all of these things that I were looking for.
And how did you end up with your classmates in the end, just out of curiosity?
How did I what?
End up with your classmates after all this process, of trying to share a table, trying to share ideas. Sometimes it didn't work. You were saying.
It was very hard. Yeah, there was times where I was like, oh, why am I doing this shit? I want to quit. I would go to my girlfriend and say, no, I'm not going back to school. I'm 38 years old. Why do I do this to myself? Why? I was, well established. Why did I do this to myself? Yeah, there were so many nights like this where I just wanted to quit. But, you manage at the end. The one thing that helped is that I made a very good friend from Los Angeles. She's great. And she was like my, my support system. We had similar ideas about stuff, so that really helped. Just one person. And my professors. I made good friends with my professors. They were three of them were really amazing. I became good friends, and we worked on stuff together. So that was also a very good part. The faculty was really very good. So yeah, I mean, like any other experience, there was really.
No, I mean, it's particular because it's a traumatizing experience. Come on, like it's you're put in a box and then they start to shake you. I mean, that's how I feel with this.
Basically, you get fucked up in school. After so many years going back to school, you really get. I had so much self-doubt that I'm still, trying to deal with it. Deal with it now. That's why when Mariana asked me about, what did you ask me? You asked me a good question, like how do I look at my practice right now? I still don't have a clear answer about it.
So do you think like to go on with your practice at whatever stage you are, you don't need a base, or you mostly prefer San Francisco as your base because you feel more comfortable with?
Just San Francisco. San Francisco is not enough for me. First of all, you can feel that you can feel the distance. It is far. Yeah. It's very, it's very San Francisco. You're in San Francisco and that's it. And the art scene is very small there at the end. There's not much happening. So it's also, I can't still get over the fact that it's too far. And I need to be connected to the Arab world in one way or another. I still can't detach myself. So I don't know what's going to. Anyway, legally,
would you prefer to go back to Cairo and start working from ground zero, for example?
I can't live in Cairo. No. I lived in Beirut for some time. I studied in Beirut and then worked in Beirut for a year, but I also couldn't handle Beirut. Beirut is a tough place, and. All my friends in Cairo are leaving anyway, so, lots of them. They're either leaving or trying to leave, and it's not I can't really think of situating myself in the Arab world right now, except for Amman. I still think Amman is still bearable in some sense. So, this is the 1 million question. I don't know.
No, I mean...
I think I've reached a point where I really believe that this is part of me. It's part of my genes that I will, keep moving from place to place and trying to. And I told you about my Greece project. I told you about it. So this is going to maybe have some, at least one clear point that I will go back and forth to.
Yeah, maybe things will clarify more when you're also doing the project there.
Yeah.
So that would be different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have to say, like in my own personal process, I also start to feel that I feel more comfortable in the region.
In the region,
Yes. Yeah. I feel much more comfortable. Yeah. I feel like when I'm going back to Aegean, like it's very personal, I know, but when I'm going back to Aegean, I really feel it, like I become happy. So I think when we are thinking of our practices, we work as curators, but we are all human beings, and I think the more personal we put from ourselves in our way of working, the better it gets. So the more happier we feel, the better the work gets. Yeah. So so the torture should be over at some point.
But I still think breaks are good. I still think breaks are good from your.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm curious to know that you were showing those images of art practices in Jordan, like the public performances and the other art activities that you showed the pictures of. I'm curious to know how people react to public performances and other kinds of art activities in Jordan, because the mentality that I have and the definition that I have from art is that art is so much related to protest and criticism. And from the other side, in the Arab world and in my country, also in Iran, there is a very kind of limited mentality of art, kind of connected, and they always connect art activities to religion and show reactions to it. So I want to actually know how people react and how they welcome the art activities in Jordan.
So when you say people, it's really, it's a very wide spectrum of, humans. So you have, the general people, let's say, who are walking in the street and they're always curious. So, for example, this performance, public performance, it's a woman standing on a podium. Of course, people will just going to be curious and do this and, stand there and watch this performance. We never had any sort of, let's say, harassment of any sort. Maybe the police would come and ask, but we never experienced any harassment towards any of the artists who performed in the street. People, let's say the art audience, if you want to call them, they're usually excited that things are happening in the street. The people like the idea of having performances or theater or dance or whatever it is in the street. It's still a welcomed idea. Even when the press write about it, they write about it in, yes, these people are using the public space as a platform to, express themselves and all of that. And strangely enough, from our experience, when we go to the municipality and we tell them that we need your support for doing public events, so far they've been supportive. And they sometimes require to meet the artists, actually, who are, doing these public events. Sometimes we wanted to do this really big graffiti with the collaboration between German and the Jordanian artists. And it's about this deformed person. And we wanted to do it in a building. So the guy turned out to be this guy who's religious, and he said, no, this is, against our beliefs. And he said, no. So you would find personal incidents of people, but generally people welcome. They like it when things happen in the street. They never, but of course, generally speaking, if you want to talk about the general popular, no, people are not very excited about these kind of art practices. But people like to hear music. People like to go and see theater, but it's not all the time accessible to them.
And what is the concept of the artworks usually practiced in Jordan? More in Warsaw, the discussions that we had and the scene inspections that we had, it's more about the communism and then the land issues and the architecture, so it is more in focus. In Afghanistan, the issue that everybody talks about is the human rights, democracy, and is women rights. Yeah. So there is a common discussion that everybody wants to have things to say about it. So I'm curious to know that what is the very hot topic about the art practice in Jordan.
Hot topic? I don't know if we have a hot topic right now. Maybe I'm not aware of it, but people discuss identity, gender. Relationship with the city. Palestine is always been a hot topic with the artists. Now the general political situation is a hot topic for many artists that are working around revolutions and all of that. Economy is lots of the times a topic that artists deal with. Relationship with the state. Thank you.